Welcome back to Let's Get Personal. I'm your host, Chris DiBella, and today's guest is very special to me. He's been the voice of my alma mater, Boston University's hockey, for over 40 years, the one and only Bernie Corbett.
I am beyond excited to be joined by a legend, somebody very well known to my alma mater. He is the voice of BU hockey, Bernie Corbett, who is a longtime BU family member. We have his parents that have gone, his grandfather. He has been the voice of BU hockey for 40 years?
Yeah, it's my 41st season doing the play-by-play.
41st season, incredible legend on campus. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Chris. Great to be here. And let me just say initially, it's great to have a partnership with you and DiBella Law, which we've formed this year, and for you to be presenting our Inside BU Hockey podcast. And we're really grateful for that. And long may we run together with the Terriers.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm super excited to crack into this because, you know, there's not too many people I can talk about it other than maybe some college buddies, and you are just such a wealth of history and knowledge of the sport that you and I both love. And I'm really so excited just to hear how your story got started voicing BU hockey.
Yeah, I was going to say, I always use the, I draw in my 70s sitcoms all the time, and, Ted Baxter and Mary Tyler Moore. It all started at a 5,000-watt radio station in Fresno, $62.50 a week and a crazy dream. Pretty close to my story, close enough for a measurement if we were in the NFL. But to say something is in your DNA, I think that might be overused, but for me, there's just, I guess there was no escaping it ultimately. You mentioned about my parents, my grandfather, another late attorney, my grandfather, my mother's dad, George Constantino. He's the first of the family. He was class of 1928 at BU. And,
wow.
and then followed up my mother to BU, and then my father. And my father a little bit later. My father had a few issues before he got to BU when he kind of figured it out. But my father, strong hockey background. Matter of fact, we're not too far from the late and lamented now Boston Arena / Matthews Arena.
Right.
And my dad he was co-captain of the Stoneham team, 1949.
Wow.
Goalie. I am the son of a goalie. It'll probably explain a lot for most of you people. I always issue that disclaimer. But my dad was very much immersed and passionate about hockey. He went to prep school. He went to Wilbraham Academy out in Springfield, and he was fortunate enough he got a scholarship. The good news and the bad news, he got a scholarship to go to Brown. I always said that I think he stopped more pucks than he opened books for the year he was the freshman goalie. Varsity, weren't eligible for varsity then.
Right.
And he was the freshman goalie, and he was on his way to being the varsity goalie the next year. And I really didn't know why he joined the Navy and during the Korean War for 3.5 years until recently. My house is like an archaeological dig. I applied for federal funds during the Reagan administration to clean the place up. You know how the federal government works, the labyrinth of the federal government. I'm still waiting. But I'm always finding things in my house. And I not that long ago found my father's report card for the 1950-51 academic year at Brown. He had about a 1.6, Chris. That might have explained why he joined the Navy and eschewed the defending the goal for Brown University.
So he had a good year.
Exactly. So he was a little bit of a late bloomer, and when he got out of the Navy, and he ended up at BU a little bit later on. My mother had already been through BU, as a matter of fact. So she was right out of Medford High School. My father's Stoneham High School. But in the early 60s, we moved to Stoneham from Medford. I always say we escaped from Medford. Common story. We crawled up the Fells Way in the middle of the night. We just slipped under the electrical fence, and we just kept running until we got to Stoneham. A lot of people did it back in those days. But at that time, BU, Jack Kelly, had taken over in 1962. He was a great player at BU and established a great legacy at Colby. Colby College at that time was competing in Division I. When he came back to BU was on the rise as a program. And my parents settled back in Stoneham. I was 3 years old at the time. And they had very close friends, the Tarasis, Joe and Joan. Joe's a BU Joe, God rest his soul, BU Hall of Famer,
right.
Halfback out of Waltham High. And my mother's, one of her best friends was Joan. They went all the way back to high school together. So the four of them started going to the games, and on a regular basis. That became a night out for the, couples night out. They'd go to dinner, and they'd come right up the street here at the arena, because that was the home of BU hockey.
Yep.
And that was a big part of their lives. And in 1967, I was finally allowed to go to the game. So I was 7 years old at the time, and of course that became a running, I guess, line between Coach Parker and I. When I got to BU, I was his manager, and as the varsity manager, you had a chance to work really closely with the coaches and chart the games for the coaches. And Jack and I, we began to bond over not just hockey, but we both love the movies, passionate about movies. And sports. And Jack's a huge Red Sox fan. I take Jack as a tradition. I take Jack opening day.
Right.
Every year we still go opening day.
Oh, that's amazing.
And then I bring Jack out for the big games, for the playoff games too, regular season once in a while. But I remember saying to Jack at the time, as we got to know each other, I said, Coach, I went to my first BU game. I was 7 and you were the captain. Now, Chris, it was a lot funnier when I was 21 and Jack was 36, okay? It's kind of lost a little bit of the humor over the years, if you know what I mean. I'm not a math guy, but I think you know what I'm talking about. But when I did get to school, I became the manager, and that gave me a great opportunity and exposure to the program. So now I was part of the family.
Right.
And I've never left the family. And I got a nice break. I did the radio, began doing the radio as a color analyst for a couple of years when I got out of school. And my partner was Rick O'Kane, and Rick was looking for a break in 2 businesses. He was looking for a break in either aviation, tough business, or broadcasting. To my luck, he got a break in aviation and became a full pilot for US Air.
Wow.
I became the voice of BU hockey in the fall of 1985 at the tender age. I just turned 25, and I haven't looked back since. And I haven't been on spring break yet either. But I haven't been skiing either, but probably dangerous. I haven't broken anything. So
there's a couple of things you touched on, which I love. One, which when you and I first met,
yes,
you said, welcome to the family. You said it again, and I think
absolutely
in the context of Jack welcoming you in, and I think that's such a great. It's a great way to welcome somebody in. It's really great to be part of the community. I'm ecstatic to be back involved in the community. But when you talk about 1985, you get in, you start. Mm-hmm. Did you have a background in communications and broadcasting? What kind of really drove you to that?
Yeah, I think the best way to describe it, I think about this all the time.
You obviously have a great voice for it.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, I got a great face for radio, as they say. I always say, my mother used to say, my mother never said that. That's that one I'm making up. But yeah, people say, hey, you got a great face for radio. I look like any cab driver in East Boston, with this face, weird too. But no, I say I'm kind of like, the guys, I know Jimi Hendrix couldn't read music, you know what I mean? They're self-taught.
Yep.
I mean, I grew up, was just absolutely immersed in sports. And I love the whole concept broadcasting. I mean, I grew up at a time in Boston where it was, you talk about a sweet spot or a golden age. I mean, the people that I listened to across the board, Bob Wilson was the voice of the Bruins. Talk about a set of pipes. And out in the corner, or, over to Ori, up to Esposito. I mean, Bob Wilson was the man. Hall of Fame broadcaster. He was the voice of the Bruins. You had Fred Cusick on TV doing the Bruins. And he was ageless. He did it forever. I remember going up to Fred Cusick once in the 80s, mid-80s, and I said, Fred, you did the high school hockey games on local radio when my father was the goalie in 1949. And he looked at me and he said, that was a long time ago. I said, yeah, I think it was, Fred. Anyway, it was puzzling. But you had Fred and Bob, you had the Red Sox, Ned Martin, Ken Coleman, who I worked with doing BU football.
Wow.
Icons, the guys that, you fell asleep to listen with my transistor radio under the pillow and everything. So you had those guys doing the Red Sox. And of course, Johnny Most doing the Celtics, which, if you know Johnny Most,
course, yeah.
I mean, there was only one Johnny Most. And these were the guys. And I was so passionate. I love sports, and, my passion for the Red Sox. And, believe it or not, these guys are going to probably boo me, get ready to boo me. And for the New York Football Giants. And that's because I'm old. That's my disclaimer. The Giants were New England's team before the Patriots were even a dream.
Right.
My father was a passionate Giants fan because he was old. My father would have turned 94 last week, as a matter of fact, if he was still with us. But I sat down and, I watched the Giants with my father, and I loved it. I got season tickets to the Giants and the Red Sox. I got I think only Dennis Drinkwater from Giant class. I used to go to the Giants games and sit with, as a matter of fact. But my passions, really, those were my 3 passions, were the Giants, the Red Sox, and BU hockey. And but the broadcasting, and I used to joke around and be at the games with my father. I'd be like 13, 14 years old between periods, and I'd say, and I'd interview my father between periods of the games, and I'd say, well, I'd have a mythical gift certificate for him at the end of it. We got a gift certificate. And one of my sponsors now with Harvard football, Eastern Clothing of Watertown. I'd say to my father would sit there rolling his eyes. He said, someone shut this kid up. He's been talking since he was 5 months old. For Christ's sakes, give me a break, will you? But really self-taught, because when I went to BU, I was in liberal arts. It was the CLA at the time, now CAS.
Same, yeah.
And political science major, English was my minor.
So we have identical backgrounds.
Oh, really? Yep. Okay, for the majors and at the time. But it was the exposure and the opportunity with the program that gave me the opportunity to actually get into broadcasting. And I remember the first game that I did, I was charting the games, and it was the end of my last year at BU, and we played up at UNH. We got eliminated in the playoffs, and I think Rick was flying somewhere. So Doug Brown, who did BU, I worked with him on BU football for years. Doug was called in to do the play-by-play, and they were like, "Ooh, who can do the color? Geez, maybe Bernie can do the color." So I actually was charting the game, multitasking here, and providing the color. And it was like, geez, he's pretty good. And that gave me the opportunity to actually get on the air for the first time, broadcasting a game. And when I got out of school, John Simpson was the athletic director. And John was a great, great guy, former BU football player, Harry Agganis era. And John actually gave me the rights for the broadcasts at 23 years old, 22 years old. And I got involved with the sales and the marketing piece of it. Worked on color analyst with BU football, which I did for a long time, and then eventually after a couple of years I mentioned with play-by-play. So yeah, very much self-taught, but so passionate about it all. I just kind of got the opportunity and kind of ran with it and made sure I didn't screw it up, I guess.
Well, anyone that's sat and talked to you for 5 minutes knows that the passion you have for BU hockey in particular, is oozing out of you, and I think that
always,
that is harder to teach, that passion that you have. But hockey's such a fast-paced sport. Mm-hmm. You have the benefit of, you also do Harvard football.
Yes.
So I'd love to hear the differences, but I would think, as a layperson, that hockey would be a much more difficult sport to call because it's so fast-paced.
Oh, without question.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like it's two completely different animals. There's no doubt about that. I enjoy both of them. My one regret at this point in my life is I haven't done anywhere near as much baseball. I've had much exposure to baseball. It's a little tougher too.
Right.
Unless you're going to go and that's what you're pursuing, and you go to some minor league team. It's not like you got a lot of college baseball to broadcast.
Right.
But the one opportunity I had doing the baseball is I worked for a guy, Creative Sports Network out of Arkansas, and I got to do the NCAA baseball tournament for about 5 years, and I did the regionals and the super regionals, and I got to travel around the country. I did that for about 5 years, and boy, did I have fun doing that.
Yeah.
The baseball is a lot of fun. But as far as the football, football is, it's perfectly set up. You call the play, you got your analyst, he's in, you're out, he's in, you're out.
Yeah.
It's set.
Right.
And it's set in stone, and I've got the benefit, not always, and sometimes you're flying a little bit more solo, but I usually I'll have the days that we got a full crew. Mike Giardi, that I do the football with at Harvard, we say, boy, when we got a full crew, we're a lot better. When we got a spotter and we got a statistician and we got like 2 or 3 supporting people with us, and we're not just flying alone. But it really is set up that, and you got your chart in front of you. Hockey, the speed, the pace, being able to, as I always say, just like the officials, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but your goal is to really get the feel of the game that particular night, the pace of the game, the feel of the game, and to be able to be descriptive. And because of the fact that there's always people on the audio side for me, I still do the ESPN Plus for the home games because I know there's people that are not watching.
Right.
So and I think a lot of the simulcasting over the years, I think people that have been trained in radio, they still keep their radio technique and traits, as they broadcast, and I know I do. But it really is descriptive. It really is just be able to paint. Things to keep in mind, to paint the picture.
Right.
And in hockey, it's like real estate, it's location, location, location. Being able to paint the picture on the ice, where things are positioned, where things, you can anticipate where things are going. And the other thing is the memorization. You got to know. I mean, you can't fake it in hockey.
No.
No. You got to have the numbers.
Right.
And you got to have the numbers down. I mean, I'll start early in the week. For example, we have Providence this weekend.
Right.
And I'll take the Providence line chart from the weekend before, and I'll put that. I'm still, very much in what century is this? I mean, I still do everything with my yellow legal pads. People are like, what the hell are those notes that you got there? People, nobody can read them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I could be writing prescriptions. Like it's like the doctors like and I write kind of small, and people are like, my God, just get away from me. But I'll take that Providence line chart from the previous week, and I'll just write them in. And then I'll go through the bios, and then I'll just make my notes on the bios as I go down, down the list.
Right.
And then I'll get started at the beginning of the week. So I'll start to familiarize myself with the Providence team and the names and the numbers, because you can't fake it. In hockey, it's happening way too fast to fake it.
Yeah.
And so it really is. It's two completely different skill sets for football to hockey. But I think that the pulse of it, the feel of it, the pace of it is what you try to do in hockey. And in football, once again, it's orchestrated, it's staged. You got a break, you come in, you come out, you color in. It's different. And I've been, over the years, I think I've been very good to my color analysts in order for them to, you just try to stay in your lanes.
Right.
And I've been blessed. I've had really 3 people that have worked with me regularly. I had Ed Carpenter, Ed was tremendous. He was a sports information director at BU. So Ed and I worked together when I started in '85, and we worked until '92, I guess it was, about 7 years. And then Tom Ryan, who I just lost, who just passed away. And, I'll try not to, anyway. But Tom and I, we had something that was really special. We worked together for, I always said, Tom, we lasted three times longer than the Beatles. We were 24 years, Right. And Tom was my best friend in the world. I talked to him all the time. He was captain of the BU team with David Quinn, 1988.
Oh, yeah.
And we had something really special. And Tom would always issue the disclaimer: I'm not a broadcaster, I'm an insurance agent, which he was. James A. Ryan Insurance in Newton. And Tommy and I, we were great friends from the time that he came to BU in 1984. And he pinch hit on a few games, and then we kind of formalized it in 1992. I formed Giant Sports Associates and began to market BU hockey as my main function, and then later Harvard football. But I asked Tommy to come on board. The best move I ever made was to say, would you like to be in with a regular broadcaster? And God, we had fun.
Yeah.
And one of the proudest things was Tommy's 2 sons, both great athletes at Newton North, and his son TJ, he absolutely was hell-bent. I want to play hockey at BU, and he walked on and he played at BU for David Quinn.
Wow.
His career ended abruptly because of concussion issues, which was very sad. But man, he made it, and when he made it, it was almost like he was my son, because the 2 of them, TJ and Brendan, the 2 kids, they grew up with it.
Right.
And once they were old enough, they came on the road trips with us, and they packed the mini hockey nets and the sticks, and it was
a special breed of person, family, that has lived in that hockey community their whole life. And
absolutely.
My boys have been going to Beanpot and BU games since they could walk. And we got now I have 2 kids at BU, as you know, and one's playing on the club hockey team. But to even just see him donning the same jersey, that the varsity team or the Division I team plays is amazing. But it's clearly deep in your family history, friends. Tell me a little bit about, what's one of the most memorable, because you've called a lot of games over many decades.
I've called a couple.
And so if you start off, you entered BU as they were winning a national championship, right?
Oh yeah, I could tell you a story about that, but continue.
And then I entered I started BU at 95.
Right, yep. Get the
where
95 ring on for
right.
you, of course, so there you go.
But, 2 very exciting times, great teams, a million amazing players. Are there a few moments, and it probably is hard to name just a few, that stick out that you remember?
Yeah. Well, first, you struck a nerve. I got to tell you one, because you mentioned about entering a national champion. So I did. I came to BU in the fall of '78 off the national championship in Providence, Rhode Island in 1978. Providence has been very good to us. Hope it is tonight too, this weekend. But we won national championships at Providence Civic Center in '78 and '95.
Right.
So I go in and national champion. Now, the first year I was the lowly JV manager. We had a JV team at the time.
Right.
I was the 3rd guy. I was the second guy, and I was on the bench. So I was on the bench for a year with the varsity, and then moved up, and then I did 3 years. I was on a self-styled 5-year program. I think it was modeled after John Belushi and Animal House. Mr. Blutaski, you have no grade point average. But my dad, the loving and nurturing and caring man that he was. So I come in 78, and then 79 they finish first and get upset in the semifinals by Dartmouth in the ECAC, the old ECAC tournament, and get knocked out. So Jack, at that point, Jack came in 74. They won the ECACs 4 straight years, and then in 78 they didn't win the ECACs, but they won the NCAA tournament. So now the year after they finish first and they get knocked out. Okay, so now my first year that I'm actually with the varsity, they're under 500 and they missed the playoffs. The second year, we're just under 500, we missed the playoffs. The third year, we're over 500, we missed the playoffs, but we win the bean pot. So around about that time, I don't remember, once again, one of those really heartfelt, tender moments with my family. My father, once again, sitting there with his, Johnny Walker Black, and his comment was, he goes, hey, Bern, let's see. You came to BU, national champions. He's sitting there, We've now missed the playoffs 3 years in a row. Kid, you, he didn't say screwed up a dynasty. I think you know what word he said. I don't know if we get an 8-second delay here. But that was his, once again, very tender, nurturing, supportive man that he was.
Right.
And he was right. I kind of felt like if I just jinxed this whole operation, But as far as moments, the first year, when I go back, was really special. 85-86 season. And, I always say, we had a pretty good team. We had John Cullen, who was the all-time leading scorer, who had a pretty damn good NHL career. A couple of 100-point seasons, Pittsburgh Penguins, Hartford Whalers. We had Scott Young, U.S. Hockey Hall of Famer. We had Clark Donatelli, Olympic captain.
Wow.
We had a Jay Octo, was a, God rest his soul, was a great player. David Quinn was the first-round pick of the Minnesota North Stars. He and Tommy Ryan were defense partners. And Scott Shaughnessy. I mean, just going up and down. We had a lot of good players in that team. BC had a lot of good players too.
Right.
And they had Craig Janney and Scott Harlow and Kevin Stevens. I mean, and just take a look at the 2 rosters. I mean, they were pretty good too. And that year played out, and I think a common theme sometimes in the BU-BC rivalry, it was last year. We lost all the regular season games. I think we lost 3 regular season games to BC. Played BC in the Beanpot final, 4-1. Thank you very much. As Coach Parker would say, we gave the Eagles a little kiss in the very memorable Beanpot final, because that was the one where Scott Shaughnessy came cross ice with Bob Sweeney, who's become a good friend. I don't know why he's become a good friend.
He's a good friend of mine too, yeah.
Really. We always say, why are we friends? We should still hate each other.
Great guy.
But Shaughnessy, they orchestrated, I don't know if you know this story, Chris, but they orchestrated the opening face-off of the Beanpot. John Cullen lose the face-off because he knew if he lost the face-off that they would play the puck. The puck would go back, and Sweeney would have the puck on the wall. So Scott Shaughnessy, who was 6'4" and 220 pounds, St. John's prep guy.
Right.
And Scott Shaughnessy, like a heat-seeking missile, came cross ice diagonally and just laid out Bob Sweeney, which kind of sent a message right from the beginning of the game.
Right.
Yeah. To this day, still talked about with the hit applied, and that kind of set the tone. But then it got even better because it was the second year of Hockey East, and Lou Lamoriello, of course, was instrumental, the Hall of Fame general manager, president of the Devils, who was the coach and athletic director at Providence. So the first 2 years of Hockey East was at the Civic Center. So year 2, and I mean, BC was, there was just no question. They were, even though we had a talented team, BC was just no question. This is BC's year. They're going to avenge the Beanpot final. Geez, do we have a chance? God, they got, look at the numbers and the stats and everything. I mean, we're good, but boy, they're pretty good. And, they're out for revenge and everything, the rivalry. Yeah, that one went even better. So Providence Civic Center, final score, BU 9, BC 4. Thank you very much. Take the regular season games. Are we playing for a trophy tonight? We'll take that, and we'll go home with it.
Right.
So that was a great first year. And those guys were great on that team. I got so many of my best friends from that first year, that team.
Right. The rivalry between BU and BC has always been phenomenal. And talk to me a little bit about the bean pot, because it is one of the, we're in the Northeast, and college sports a little bit different than it is in the South or the Midwest, right? And we don't, talk about losing BU football. We can circle back to that. They lost it when I was at school. And
97.
Right. And I distinctly remember the bean pot after us losing football, and all they would chant is BU football. Right, we would chant Unabomber amongst other things. Right?
Gambling scandal. That's right.
But I mean, it is one of the few events in Boston where it is packed with college kids, and you have that real college environment. And I mean, I've been taking, like I said, my kids since they were tiny, and of course my wife went to Northeastern, so that added to it. And although they were terrible back in the day,
right? That's changed.
But that's changed dramatically, and it is one of the most fun events. To anybody that hasn't gone to it, it's special.
Oh,
I mean, we could even talk to the more recent one where they had Celebrini and Hudson in the stands. Right, and we come back against BC. I mean, it's an electric environment. But why is it so special in Boston? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it. I think it is. It's so uniquely Boston. And you're talking to the guy that I wish the heck I had saved copies of it, because it's been out of print. But I wrote the history of the bean pot, the 50th anniversary.
I'd love to read that.
2002. Yep. I was going to say, I'm hoping we're getting close to 75. I'd love to be able to update it at this point, because God, it was fun to write the whole history of the tournament. But it really brings together, and once again, the building that they just closed up the street was home to all 4 of the schools.
Yeah.
I mean, BC played their home games there until 1956 in the Q Forum. Harvard played their home games there until 1958, Watson Rink. We played there until 71, until Walter Brown opened.
Right.
Northeastern played there from 1930 until December 13th. They played every home game they ever played there. So all 4 of the schools shared that building.
Right. I didn't realize all 4 played there.
All 4, absolutely, for decades.
Right.
And it was just a very kind of an innocuous thing in terms of, how did it start? 1952, they looked at, dates on the calendar. It was around Christmas time. Geez, we got a couple of open dates. Everybody plays their home games here. It was kind of a precursor to what became the Boston Arena Christmas tournament. So that first year was played December 27th and 28th, or 26th and 27th. It was right after Christmas. The next year they played it in January of 54, and then eventually they settled on the first 2 Mondays in February, which was 57, was kind of established that, okay, we've got a place for the bean pot in terms of the time. But it brings Boston together in a unique way. You've got Northeastern's always had with the co-op school and more of a blue-collar reputation.
Yep.
BU, the reputation with BU, I mean, obviously it's always been a strong tri-state area influence, as with you, with that quality, and an international, obviously, which has even grown even more. It's been unique. But even with that said, BU has been good and taken pride in hockey for time eternal. You can go back to guys that played on the 1936 Olympic team, like Johnny Lax and Paul Rowe, and I mean, guys very early on. And then a great tradition with Harry Cleverly and Jack Garrity, and the NCAA tournament began in 1948, and BU was in the second NCAA tournament, way back. So there's a tradition that goes back for pride in hockey. BC is BC, I mean, for better and, well, I'd say for worse. Obviously, I would emphatically say for worse. But I mean, BC is, it's the Catholic school, the strong influence on everything that is Boston. And in terms of athletic, I mean, they've had some time in football, obviously, in basketball, not as much as they think they've had in terms of maybe their opinion of themselves, but they've obviously had a hockey background. I mean, they won their national championship the second year of the NCAA tournament, 1949.
Yep.
So they've had a hockey pride and tradition. And then Harvard, I mean, and Harvard goes back to literally time eternal in hockey to the beginning. And these guys, there's still enough of a local element in terms of the guys that play in it that have played together and are familiar with each other. Now, a lot of times, these guys, maybe the rivalry comes from they play the national program against each other.
Right.
But the national and the international aura and appeal of this tournament and the exposure has been pretty dramatic.
Yeah, I mean, the highlights all over ESPN, always following the tournament,
Absolutely. Coach Parker said at one point, he said, I had no idea until I was recruiting a kid. This was many years ago now. And he was in, North Vancouver recruiting a kid, and he walked in and he was talking to the kids. I saw the Beanpot. I watched the Beanpot the other night. Before Jack can even say, hey, you got a chance to play in the Beanpot. You can play where the Bruins play. And it really's taken on kind of a life of its own.
Right. One of the things I love too, and I mean it's evolving, right? But a lot of the BU, BC rosters traditionally, there's a handful of local kids.
Yes.
Because as you said, I think everybody that grows up in this area that watched the Beanpot would love to play for a BU or BC. Oh. And I feel like they still get a lot of the good talent locally from it. And it's always nice to watch a Beanpot where there's, a Cole Eiserman from Newburyport or somebody that's, right around town that, kids, all the little kids know him because they've heard of him or a family member of his, and that makes it even more special. I do like having the local kid element, but it's just such a great tournament.
Oh, and the moments and the unexpected, expect the unexpected, the unlikely heroes.
Right.
It's really had all of that.
So, anybody listening again can just, the knowledge that you bring it's amazing to me. I could just sit and listen to you talk about not only BU hockey but Boston sports, and I think BU's lucky to have you. And
thank you.
As you've been here now for over 4.
Please write a letter to the athletic director. Letters to Drew Maricello. Yeah, no.
But that's special when any program, could be the Bruins, the Patriots, but to have somebody that's that invested, that knowledgeable, that caring and passionate, as an alumnus, it really holds a special place to me that you're there and knowing you're there and calling the games. As you've been here now over 4 decades, what impact or mark do you want to leave so that when you walk away with this someday, hopefully not anytime soon, but when you do, right, what legacy or mark do you want to have left on this program?
Wow, that's a heavy question. That's a deep question. It is something that crosses my mind at this point. I mean, first of all, I got to make it clear, I got no concept of retirement. I mean, people my age now are retiring. Right. And for me, it's retire from what? Nobody, I mean nobody, has been as fortunate as I've been to live this out and to be having as much fun as I've had. Right. And I can only hope. I mean, I got a lot of great role models in broadcasting, and we just lost Bob Uecker recently. I mean, he was still doing the Milwaukee games. He was almost 90. Right. I mean, if God willing, I've tried to help take care of myself health-wise, and thank God I'm still running. I'm still working out and running and everything. I think it's paying off. The numbers were pretty good in my physical about a week ago.
Yeah, you're in great shape.
That I'm in good shape. That I could keep it going. But I think that when you talk about a legacy, I think a passion is the word that I come back to. I don't know, people a little bit more obscure artists, but I mean, I'm a big rock and roll and a big music guy. And Graham Parker in the Rumor band, the English band, but he had a song called Passion is No Ordinary Word. And that's something I really live by. And I think that if I can bring to this generation, and maybe I'm good for another generation that's going to be listening to BU hockey and watching BU hockey, that passion is really the key to it in terms of what I would bring on. That I truly have been immersed, invested completely in this program and love of this program. And last year, when they acknowledged my 40th season, was special. I mean, I didn't ask for it, and I came into a team meeting on the day before the game. They said, be at the team meeting. I came in, the guys were in the film room. Jay and Drew Maricello was a very close friend, and the athletic director. I'm very close with Jay. I mean, just the opportunity that I did the games when Jay was 18 when he came to BU from Burlington High. Right. And now here he is as my head coach. And I got pictures of Jay with my mother at Jay's Stanley Cup party. Right. He was great to my mother,
Full circle.
Part of the family, once again.
Right.
That's because Jack is the godfather of our family. That's one of our favorite movies, and Jack is the godfather, leading the program for 40 years.
Yeah, yeah.
But they called me in and they had the jersey, number 40 with my name on it, and I had to clear that with Big Mike, with Yegorov, and said, you mind me your number? He said, it's okay with me. That's okay, buddy. So, fine, I don't want to get Big Mike upset. But then I was on the ice before the game the next night against Northeastern. I got to speak for a moment. I got to acknowledge the crowd. And then they made the mistake of letting me come in and talk to the team. And I went in and I talked to the team and I tried to give them the Jack Parker, fire them up, the Jack Parker speech. And I stalked the locker room and I looked everybody in the eye and I said, hey, nobody has a watch anymore. You guys all got phones. I'll tell you what time it is. You want to know what time it is? It's the time of your life. Each and every one of you, it's the time of your life. So make the most of what you have right here and right now. My God, I thought they knocked the door down when they came out. And we lost 5-1 to Northeast. So only Jay and Joe got excited because they were both captains for Jack.
Right.
But that passion, when you talk about my legacy, I don't want anybody to ever said that I left anything other than out on the ice in terms of me being invested and immersed and doing everything that I can possibly do to make this program better, and hopefully to leave this program in better shape. And hopefully, how do you want to go? Hopefully, I'll die in the middle of a BC game, or something. It's like my doctor has half-season tickets now. He's BU Medical, Dr. Tiff, right across the street. And people are like, is that a sign? Like, for the BC games, maybe to have, your physician is on call. He's in section 103 if he's needed right now. But really, just to be able to bring that passion. That's the word that you mentioned, Chris, and it's something that I live by. And God, if I ever wake up and if there's ever, I'm not excited about going to Providence tonight, then I guess that's the end. But I just can't see that day coming right now. I'm truly, I fell in love with it, and
I think you got plenty of years left.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, I was inspired just last week with Indiana winning the national championship.
Oh yeah, that was a hell of a game.
Don Fisher, Don Fisher was on ESPN, and I had heard the name because he did Indiana basketball, and he's actually the voice of Indiana basketball and football, which I didn't know. Indiana football, not much of a tradition,
right?
But he did both. 78 years old, and they showed him his excitement calling the national championship game.
It's amazing.
Hopefully, I just want to be Vince Scully. Am I asking for too much?
Well, on behalf of everyone that's gone to BU, sincerely, I mean this, that I'm so proud to have you calling the games for us, and I thank you for all the work that you put into this program.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you for your support.
Yeah.
Let's say, long may we run.
Absolutely.
As part of the family. Thanks.
As always, thanks for joining Let's Get Personal. If you know someone who might like this episode, please share it with them and review us on iTunes, as it really helps us to get the word out. And don't forget to like and subscribe to Let's Get Personal with Chris DiBella on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever fine podcasts are downloaded.